I'm live. I'm live. Good morning, AP Euro. Today is April Fool's Day, which is, I never liked April Fool's Day. I think I told one of my 10 to 15 guys who comment regularly, which is a message to the rest of you. I'd really appreciate your comments. And please don't just say checking in. Just say something. And I don't even care if you like the lecture or not. Very boring today, Horton. Uh, you know, just let me know you're out there. But anyway, yeah, I've never liked April Fool's Day because I'm so gullible. I believe stuff. I tend to believe what people tell me. And so, yes, here we are into April. And from home, I think I told you guys yesterday that I used to sit around and say, one day there'd be this disease that would be spread through the air, and you know, but I really thought that was going to happen a long time after I died. Not, but anyway, and so it's not the worst it could be. Remember, of course, during the Great Flu pandemic of immediately following World War I, which killed between 50 and 100 million people around the world. They had no defense against it, and they didn't understand things like social distancing to prevent measures for it. And so, it is better than that. But, let me be, if you're not taking this seriously already, let me advise you guys. I care about you guys. You're my guys. One day you guys are going to go to college. So do the social distancing thing. Be bored. It's okay to be bored. It's not that terrible. Other people have had to do worse. And I'm not talking about the old grandpa stories where he walked 5 miles to school every day in the snow, uphill both ways. It's just what has been cast upon us. And we have to deal with it. Why do we have to deal with it? Because one day I want you to go to college. One day I want you, for example, I want you to travel. I was perusing through Facebook yesterday, and one of my AP Euro students, a raw girl, young woman now, from years ago, who went to pharmacy school and was about to go off, and she'd gotten an internship with a hospital in Houston, and she posted a photo yesterday on Facebook because today was going to be the first day of her big trip to Europe. She was going to go and backpack through Europe 5 weeks, which that's awesome, and that's out the door now. But the cool thing is she's still young and she's going into a promising career, but she wants to do those things. And so to do those things, got to be healthy. So yeah, do what you're supposed to do. And forgive me for preaching to you, hopefully something that you're already doing. And so, yeah, once again, today is Wednesday. We're going to have that test Friday. Let's see if we can finish this unit in the next 2 days. I feel pretty confident that we can, since I don't have Mr. Fote asking questions all the time. Called you out, Mr. Fote, because you have not checked in a few days. Since I don't have Mr. Fote or Mr. Myers, harassing me with questions. No, Mr. Myers, he likes to do the turtle thing in class where he doesn't wear a hood, but Mr. Horton, don't look at me. Mr. Horton, don't look at me. Mr. Horton, don't look at me. And that's okay. I enjoy Mr. Myers a lot. But yes, test Friday. We are going to have that test Friday. So We need to, what did they say on Mulan? Mulan, let's get down to business. Yes. Okay, we are talking about the rise of Nazism in Germany. I hope you noticed that this morning I sent you 3 emails. The first one had I hope you looked at the first one. I mean, that's fun. The Saturday Night Live, over the 45 years they've been in existence, have had some wonderful characters, and one of the skits I love most of all was the Spartan Spirit skit. There's a whole series of those. Will Ferrell and what's her name, Tony something or other, and they would be these cheerleaders, Spartan cheerleaders, who actually would go to events and would cheer even though they didn't make the team, and they're quite comic. And so, yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. The other 2 that I sent you, actually, I only sent you 2 emails. Yeah, the second one had 2 videos. That's what it was. One was on the rise of fascism in Italy, and the other is on the rise of Nazism in Germany. And I do hope that you took the time to watch those, or if you don't, you will. I mean, there were those little cartoon videos that, that are very pointed. They're very good. They're very well done. But yes, you enjoy having me talk to you, right? April Fool's Day, right? So the SA, which stands for Sturmabteilung, Storm, S-T-O-R-M, Abteilung, A-B-T-E-I-L-U-N-G. The SA was the chief instrument of Nazi intimidation. They, the SA, who will later evolve into the SS, der Schutzstaffel, the SS, which is led by that squirrely little guy, Heinrich Himmler. Yes. I wish I had a picture of Heinrich Himmler to show you now. He looks like Mr. Peabody after he reaches old age retirement. I mean, he's a real scrawny guy, has the tortoiseshell glasses, and and he runs the SS, the most feared wing of the entire Nazi organization, except for perhaps the Gestapo. The Gestapo was like the secret police who investigated matters within the Nazi party, But anyway, so the SA, for now, in the 1920s, the SA was the chief instrument of Nazi intimidation. They were the muscle. They were the ones who would, if you were a Jew and they didn't crash your shop during the day, they would show up at night, and the next morning your family would be disappeared. So they were a law unto themselves, and the existence of such a small private army in the Weimar Republic showed the potential for, just because the Weimar Republic was a democracy did not mean that everybody could live together peacefully and harmoniously. That surely didn't happen in the 1920s. The economy was, being torn apart. Socialists and the communists in Germany also organized paramilitary organizations. The French occupation of the Ruhr. We talked about that before, and it's mentioned on your test. At one point in time, I look terrible. At one point in time, the French will send their army into the Ruhr, the heavily industrialized section of Western Germany, for the purpose of collecting debt payments. And also German inflation gave the Nazis the opportunity to stand up and oppose the Weimar Republic, and the Nazis like Adolf Hitler, who burst onto the scene in the early part of the 1920s as the new voice of this Nazi party, to challenge the Weimar Republic. I mean, it's easy to challenge the incumbent government in a democracy because whatever's going wrong right there, you just blame on them. Yeah, whether it's not their fault or not, which is partially unfair, but also partially the nature of democracy. So, because of his oratorical skills, and organizational ability, I mean, this was the age of radio. This was the age of this new medium, and people would cluster around their radios. Like today, they cluster around their cell phones. And when I was a child, they clustered around their television sets. Every family only had one when I was a kid. Actually, well, we didn't, but that's another story. But yeah, you see, and so being able to speak, getting on the radio and speaking, that sent his message. But to do that, you have to be a good speaker. And one of the strengths that both, in fact, rather all, Benito Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, but also Winston Churchill, and also Franklin Delano Roosevelt had during this time was the ability to speak, to communicate vocally. There's a wonderful film that you should check out when you have time over spring break. I hate to be Debbie Downer here, but next week on spring break, A, you're going to be hanging out at home. And B, I looked at the weather forecast and it doesn't look good. So a decent historical, and it's not a war story. It's not a war story, although it deals with the war. If you've never seen it, it's called The King's Speech. The King's Speech. And it is about the King of England, Edward, I believe it is, Edward the Sixth or something like that. No, whatever. Well, this Edward, whichever the king it was, he becomes King of England in the middle of the 1930s, quite surprisingly. His brother, who was the monarch, who was going to be the monarch of England, had married an American divorced woman. And, unlike today, the Buckingham Palace just said that just won't do, and therefore you're not going to be the king, and we'll go with the next guy in line. Problem was, this new guy had a terrible speech impediment. He stuttered terribly. And this was the time when all leaders were expected to go on the microphone and to stand up and to speak to their nations. And, the idea that the king, the leader of England, who, could, and he sounded, people are cruel today, and they were cruel back then about other people's physical challenges. Can you imagine what the Germans would have done with this new king speaking on the air? See, comparing Adolf Hitler, who his gestures and his fist pumping and things like that, rousing the crowd. And then here's the King of England, who can't say a simple sentence without just stuttering helplessly. And, it just, the story was that he got a speech coach who helped him, because when England joined the war, and that's where the film ends, when England joined the war against Germany, he had to address the nation, not just the nation of England, but all of the Commonwealth, South Africa, India, Canada, and tell them we are going to war against the Germans. And that would have been, something that the Germans would have taken and just made fun of. It would have been a terrible blow to English morale, a tremendous uptake for German morale. And so, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, the ability to speak. And Hitler was a wonderful speaker. Because of his oratorical skills, his organizational ability, Hitler eventually dominates the Nazi Party. On November the 9th, 1923, Hitler and his followers, accompanied by the old World War I General Erich von Ludendorff, the same who had won the Battle of the Tannenberg Lakes early in World War I, attempted a coup. The German word for coup is push. It happened in Berlin. It was unsuccessful. 16 Nazis were killed. Hitler and Ludendorff were both tried for treason. Ludendorff, of course, being a World War I hero, was acquitted. Hitler, though, was jailed. And during this jail time, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but paroled after only a few months. During this jail time, he wrote Mein Kampf, My Struggle. And Mein Kampf, is where Hitler laid out his ideology, his plans. The book advocated anti-Semitism. It also talked about the Germans' idea for Lebensraum, which is an important word going forward, Lebensraum. And I just saw Miss Minning circle that, which means literally translates into living space. Now you say, what does that mean in a real sense? Well, remember that Germany had once owned much of Eastern Europe, much of Poland, but this idea of Adolf Hitler, of the master race, of the Aryan race, and things of that nature, I mean, he was serious. He was serious, and he took social Darwinism to the next level. He said that one race should dominate the earth, and it should be the most superior race. And he declared that the German people were the descendants of the Aryans who had lived in Central Asia 25,000 years ago, and they should be that people. But that a people like the Germans need living space to increase their population. And that he had a specific area in mind, and that area was the nice flat plains of Eastern Europe, extending in the Ukraine, around the Black Sea, the Caucasus, for two reasons. Number one, a lot of wheat. There's a tremendous amount of wheat grown in that part of the world. Wheat feeds people. And also, recently had been discovered petroleum in that area. And so, yeah, that was the living space. Now, what happens to those people who are living there? Well, they're either going to move or their lives are not going to be very long. And so, yeah, Lebensraum, that's what it means, living space. The natural target of Hitler's plans were, of course, Jews, the successor states, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, the successor states, and Eastern Europe, the Soviet Union, because, of course, one of the things, the exact opposite of the fascists, and Nazism is a form of fascism, is communism. The Soviets and any groups within Germany who opposed Hitler's vision of national unity and purpose. During his imprisonment, he made two observations. He came to see himself as the leader who could transform Germany from a position of weakness into a position of strength, and that the party must pursue power by, here's a key thing, and I've seen this in AP Euro exams, the party must pursue power through legal means. Okay, Roman numeral 29. So in other parts of Germany, officials were trying to repair the damage from the horrific inflation, like Gustav Stresemann, who was primarily responsible for the reconstruction of the republic and for giving it, the new republic, some self-confidence. He was Chancellor of Germany from August to November of 1923. He abandoned the policy of passive resistance in the Ruhr, as the country could simply no longer afford to not have the revenue from the Ruhr. He adopted a new currency. Miss Minning is circling that word, Rentenmark, because it will become important in your future. One Rentenmark was worth 1 trillion of the old Weimar Republic Deutschmarks. I mean, basically, they were just shrinking the currency to make it more manageable. I mean, it's ridiculous to have to go to the store or the bakery for one loaf of bread and have to carry the currency there in a wheelbarrow. And that's not an exaggeration, but that's what they did. He simply altered the currency, made it manageable again. It favored, he crushed Hitler's beer hall Putsch and any communist uprisings. In 1924, the Weimar Republic agreed to the circle, Miss Manning, to the Dawes Plan. The Dawes Plan was named after American Secretary of State William Dawes. Pardon me. It was a plan that the United States came up with to work out a manageable payment plan so that Germany could survive as a separate entity. I mean, if the Allied powers, Britain, France, the rest of them, had really thought it through, the last thing you would want is for Germany to collapse. Because Germany collapses, that leaves a giant, power vacuum in Central Europe, one of the largest ethnicities in the world, the Germans. And when you have a collapse like that, the government tends to fall into hands of radicals, which it did. But anyway, so yeah, this guy Dawes, Secretary of State, came up with this workable payment plan that the Germans could live with. It favored lower annual payments of the reparations and allowed those payments to vary according to the fortunes of the German economy. If the German economy was down one year, then their payment that year would not be so incredibly high. The other part of that was the French pulled out of the Ruhr. In 1925, the Social Democratic Republican president, Friedrich Ebert, died and was replaced by Paul von Hindenburg. Von Hindenburg, another of the old World War I generals, but who was also a conservative monarchist. This new political and economic stability meant that foreign capital now flowed into the German economy freely. Employment in Germany rose. In the steel and chemical industries, large combines spread. In other words, the economy in Germany was starting to rev up again. In the days of the Weimar Republic, it wasn't all bad news. I'm going to sneeze, forgive me. The prosperity helped broaden appreciation and the acceptance of the Weimar Republic. In foreign affairs, Gustav Stresemann was conciliatory. In other words, he said, okay, come on, let's make up, let's be nice, let's move forward. World War I's over, let's go forward. He fulfilled the provisions of the Paris settlement and even tried to revise them. He said, okay, we'll work within the Versailles Treaty and maybe we can get some revisions here. How about that? Through compromise. He aimed to recover the German territories in Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Austria through diplomacy. Of course, while this is going on, the radicals, particularly Adolf Hitler, is saying, he is weak. He is dealing from a position of weakness, But anyway, another famous treaty of the time also, did you circle that one? Did you circle the Locarno Treaty, Miss Manning? Did you? I'll call somebody else out. Did you circle the Locarno Treaty, Miss Hudson Pillar? Did you? Was the Locarno Treaty. It came from the following. Aristide Briand, the very successful Foreign Secretary of France, and Austen Chamberlain of Britain, wanted a fresh start. France and Germany both accepted the western frontier of Germany as legitimate, meaning that Germany said, okay, France, you win. You get to keep the Alsace-Lorraine, but you stay out of our Ruhr, please, okay? So the western frontier of Germany that's solid. France then agreed to German membership in the League of Nations. And France strengthens its ties with the Little Entente. Little Entente. Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and the third one. It's not Poland. Come on, help me here. Hungary? Maybe. But I don't think so. But anyway, do you know, Mr. Lynn? Czechoslovakia, I know it's Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Romania. Yes, Romania. Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Anyway, France strengthened its ties with the Little Entente as a way of still keeping Germany isolated and weak. Here comes this news. Sorry. France also agreed to withdraw soldiers from the Rhineland. They said, where's the Rhine? The Rhineland is the land immediately on both sides of the Rhine River. So France agreed to withdraw troops from the Rhineland in 1930, which was 5 years ahead of the original terms of the Versailles Treaty. Locarno, in the short term, pleased everyone. Germany was glad to have achieved respectability and a guarantee against another Ruhr occupation, as well as to have the possibility of a revision of borders in the east. In other words, Germany said, hey, look, we got them to agree with us on some things. Maybe we can get them to also agree on redoing the borders in the east, because Germany lost a tremendous amount of land that became Poland, that became the Polish corridor in particular. Remember, I told you that I went to Poznan in 2016, and that the biggest historical structure in Poznan was the summer home of the Kaiser Wilhelm, the first and Wilhelm II. What does that tell us? It tells us that Poznan was once a part of Germany, and it was German. All Germans lived there. Well, when I was in Poznan in 2016, I didn't see no Germans. Didn't see any signs in German. Didn't hear German spoken on the street, and I would recognize it. The point of the matter was but that's what the Germans were hoping for. Maybe if we get the Allies to agree with us, we're agreeing over here in the West, okay, maybe we'll turn around and we'll get back the land that was taken from us through negotiation, by being nice. Of course, all this time, Adolf Hitler sat there saying, you can't get them to do things by being nice. Nice is not going to cut it. So Britain was glad to have a more active hand in European affairs, and the French were glad of the fact that the Germans had accepted the border, the Alsace-Lorraine, which they lost in the Franco-Prussian War, and they were happy to have it back. The Locarno Agreements brought a new spirit of hope to Europe. Both Neville Chamberlain and Dawes received the Nobel Peace Prize. This was carried further later on when Japan, the United States, and all the Locarno states are the countries that had signed the Locarno Agreement, accepted the Kellogg-Briand Pact. which is on your test. The Kellogg-Briand Pact, what is that? Which is also, the Kellogg-Briand Pact was an agreement between Aristide Briand and this guy, Clark Kellogg, United States Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs, where the United States and France signed this. Basically, it was like a wish. It really wasn't a treaty. It was a document that forever condemned war as a tool of foreign policy. Say again, it condemned war as a tool of foreign policy. And so, that was the Kellogg-Briand Pact. And, it sounded wonderful. We're going to have peace forever. And all the other good countries of Europe who were wanting Christmas presents from Santa Claus said, let me sign that too. I want to be good. I want Santa to bring me gifts. I mean, basically, that's all it was. It was, we're going to sign the Kellogg. Oh, we're never going to have war again. Yay. It was a nice idea, which renounced war as an instrument of foreign policy. So, however, this joy and optimism were unjustified, as the Germans still did not accept the eastern borders of their country under the Locarno Agreements. The British, at one point in time, said that they would not fight to preserve the Polish corridor. Remember the Polish corridor? Polish corridor? That, strip of land that gave Poland an outlet to the Baltic Sea, but it also split Germany into two parts. And so, the British said, you know what, we won't send soldiers to defend that. Germany continued clandestine military operations with the Soviet Union. In other words, German soldiers went to the Soviet Union where they trained in secret. German pilots trained in secret. So, in Germany, most people thought the Locarno Agreements was just a further extension of Versailles. Most people did. The rest of the world said, oh, Locarno Agreement is great. Germany's saying, no, it's not. When the Dawes Plan expired in 1929, it was replaced by the Young Plan, named for American businessman Owen D. Young. Once again, lowering reparation payments. It put a limit on how long those payments had to be made, and removed Germany entirely from outside intervention and control. And look at this. We are on the last page of this study guide, boys and girls. What will we do tomorrow? Well, tune in and you'll have to see. Maybe I'll just talk about what's on the test a little bit tomorrow. A major war, meaning World War II, was not inevitable. Once again, the idea that many historians have, that I frankly agree with, is that the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, World War I, and World War II are basically all the same war, just with breathing periods in between, because the primary combatants are the same. But a major war was still not inevitable. German leaders would continue to press for change, but leaders like Gustav Stresemann, moderates, parliamentarians, would not have resorted to all-out war. Europe, aided by American loans, was actually headed for prosperity throughout the 20s. Now, Europe was recovering from the war and headed for prosperity. Continual prosperity would have won loyalty from the Germans for the Weimar Republic. Same saying, it's the economy, stupid. Had the run of prosperity in Germany continued, people would have kind of shrugged their shoulders, say, maybe this Weimar Republic's got something. Maybe we'll like them. It really is the economy, stupid. Please don't go home to tell your mom I called you stupid, because I didn't. But it's the say. If the economy's good, people are okay. People say, oh, okay, My rice bowl is filled. I have a job and things are fine. We don't need to make changes. But then in 1929, the Great Depression is going to change everything. What is the cause of World War II? Answer, Great Depression. It's the economy, stupid. Yeah. And yeah, there you have it. So we will actually, the Great Depression, and now I'm basically going out of my head and not looking at a study guide. Both of my parents lived through the Great Depression. My father was born in 1906 and my mother was born in 1920. Yes, that's right, 14 years, I know. Which once again, wasn't that unusual. It's my second one today. My wife doesn't know. She doesn't like me to drink these. I say it's better than coffee. And I need to wake up. I mean, come on. But anyway, yeah, my mother and father both lived through the Great Depression. And both of them said that it was a time when they used all sorts of euphemism. Old Pete was knocking at your door. The wolf was knocking at your door. I mean, both my parents came from Alabama, and 1929 Alabama, the rural South was so very impoverished, and when the Great Depression hit, of course, they were impoverished before the Great Depression. Now their jobs being basically working farms, sharecropping, those kind of things. It just, the results just cascaded downward. What caused the Great Depression? One word, and it's a long word, which actually over speculation. Now, over means too much, obviously. Speculation, and we talked a little about this a long time ago when we talked about how the Dutch invested so much money in the tulip market. Remember we watched that film where it showed the Dutch, where tulips at one point in time were worth more than their weight in gold, which is incredibly stupid. Pardon me. But yeah, over speculation. You say, well, okay, Mr. Horton, we did go over, but I forget. What is over speculation? Well, first you need to know what speculation is. Speculation is when you buy something like stock in the anticipation that later on that commodity like stock will be worth more in value, and therefore you turn around and sell that item, stock, and you make a profit. And then, what happens in the 1920s in the United States was that people were buying tons and tons of stock. They became paper millionaires. What does that mean, paper millionaires? In other words, they bought all this stock and they would continue to reinvest and buy more stock. And yes, the value of their stock was going through the roof. But right now, my stock is going through the floor. But all their money was tied up in stock. That meant that if something bad were to happen, that stock would be worth nothing. And that's exactly what did happen. It actually, believe it or not, started in the United States. The stock market crash in October the 27th of 1929 started in Roses, Rose Market futures. Today, when people on the stock market buy shares of agricultural products, they're called futures. In other words, you buy that crop as it's being planted with the anticipation that when it is harvested, it'll be worth a lot more money. And, people, the other thing about the stock market, and I know I'm rambling here, I'm going to shut up in just a second, but people were being allowed in the 1920s to do something that is illegal today, which is called buying stocks on margin. O-N, margin, M-A-R-G-I-N. You say, what does that mean? It means borrowing money from the bank to buy stocks. And when the stock rises in price, you take that money from the sale, turn around, and you pay off the loan. And then you get greedy, you borrow more money, buy more stock. Well, that idea is that the price of stock is always going to be going up. What happens if it doesn't go up? Answer, you lose your money, and then you have to go to the bank and say, I'm sorry, I don't have the money to pay your loan. But I can give you my stock. Of course, your stock is worthless. Problem was, though, that when banks lend money, they lend the money that in 1920s that I put in the bank. And a bank, too, can go belly up. And I mean, basically what you have with the stock market crash, and I'm going to shut up now, I'm sorry, is that everybody started trying to sell their stocks. And when everybody sold their stocks, the stock market spiraled downward and the value of stocks went down, and people who had borrowed money from the banks to buy that stock lost their money. The banks lost their money, and therefore people who had money in those banks lost their money, and businesses, in order to save themselves, hate to say it, but it's just like many businesses today, they began slashing workers and laying off people. And so, yeah. And it's depressing. It is depressing. So what's the difference between a recession and depression? The difference between a recession and depression, a recession is 3 consecutive quarters, 3 months, 3 consecutive sets of 3 months, 9 months of sustained economic loss. A depression is longer and more sustained than that. All right, I've kept you enough. Tomorrow we'll talk a little bit about the test, a little bit. I'll send you some more clips to look at, and Friday we'll have that test. Thank you all. Have a good day.